Welcome you in to another edition of the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead Show. We're coming to you from Quaker Steak and Lube in State College, where the weather changes every 5 minutes. If you don't like what you see, just hang on 5 minutes. We'll go from a snowstorm to 80 degrees here in about 5 days.
And my throat can prove that.
Yes.
It's the crazy uncle that you got that you don't tell anybody about. He gets out every once in a while.
And I'm telling you, I'm looking at the weather this morning. I'm like, well, it's going to rain all day. I'm going to take the day off from Clarendon. I've been on Clarendon for the last week and a half. So on the way down here, all day I'm fine. On the way down here, I had about a 5-minute sneezing fit for crying out loud. I
want to get something off my chest, Ironhead. I heard you and Booch the other day talking a lot of junk about me when I missed the show because of my beautiful voice.
Yeah.
I apologize. But, yes, it's about 6 times this has happened since we've had the weather change. We've had it happen 11 times. So
yeah.
I'm batting 500 pretty much right now. I'm getting allergies and sick from it. So
Pirates are dreaming of somebody that bats 500. I'm dreaming of somebody that bats 250. What am I talking about?
The Phillies would pay a lot of money for that right now, too.
This gentleman in the middle, if you don't know, is Jay Paterno. And, Jay, we thank you for joining us today. Greatly appreciate it. A few things we'll get into, but really want to talk about the name, image, and likeness stuff. And just, I know you've written at least one column on it that I read in State College. I feel like you touched on at least one other one. But I'm really interested to hear your perspective just on how this changes intercollegiate athletics. And again, I think my point all along, and again, I don't think you put the genie back in the bottle now, but I don't think people in charge of this thought through the overall impact to intercollegiate athletics, because I think for football and basketball and for the players in those sports, this is going to be largely very good and very beneficial. And there will be individuals in other sports that will benefit, but I think 10 years down the road, maybe even sooner than that, you're going to see a significant reduction in the overall scholarship opportunities for kids coming out of high school to play intercollegiate athletics, is my guess.
Well, I think there's no question it changes everything in the marketplace, because now it's, people are using it to recruit, and I think that will shake out, because I think you're going to find that there's not a return on your investment. If you give a college quarterback $500,000 to come to play at your school, that guy, that person that gives him $500,000 is not going to get a return on his investment. If you look at Dr. Pepper last year, they put the quarterback from Clemson in their ads.
Yep.
And week 1, they scored 3 points. And that ad disappeared, and Dr. Pepper saying, well, that was a waste of money. So, I mean, and that's not to be critical of the quarterback Clemson. It's just that those things, everybody thinks there's going to be all these national deals. Look at the NFL. How many NFL players have real national deals? Not that many. And college football is even more regional than that. Now, when you talk about those other types of things where guys are getting free food here or getting this, that'll shake itself out. I don't think everybody thinks that there's this ATM recruiting model. I think that will also ebb over time, because if I go to you, Jeff, hey, we need $50,000 to go get this quarterback, and then next year that quarterback says, well, I'm going to portal because I can now go get $100,000.
Yep.
And I got to call, I got to come back to you and say, Jeff, we need $100,000 to keep him. And while we're here, Jeff, we need $50,000 for the running back in the next recruiting class, and we need $75,000 to get a wideout out of. You're going to look at me and go, hey, dude, I'm not made of money.
Don't mind me if I'm over here throwing up while you're talking about this, Jay.
So I think, one of the things that I think where this can benefit sports is, what people don't realize is they look at every college athlete as being on full scholarship, like football and basketball and women's basketball, women's volleyball, and gymnastics.
Yep.
They don't realize that there are 9.9 wrestling scholarships. There are 39 guys on the roster.
Yep.
So when Cale has to go out into a home in Ohio and say, I can give you half a scholarship, which is a huch number in wrestling, as you know, but let's say it's half because the math's easier for me. But that's 25 point something, $25,000.
Yeah.
To get that wrestler to come here. Ohio State can walk in off from a half scholarship, and it's $11,000. And over 4 years, That's $60-something thousand. Now, Kale to me is worth the price.
Right.
But, Kale hopefully he's here a long, long time. But, that may not always be the case. And that's a burden on these athletes. And that's where I think NIL can start to make a difference for sports like that.
Yeah, and I think it's again, there's so many evolving elements to all of this in college athletics, including the name, image, likeness. And, I think to the NCAA's everlasting discredit, it never even tried to get out in front of this, seeing the way the courts were, you go back to the whole EA Sports thing. I mean, you could see this coming. Anybody paying any attention could see how this was going to start to go. And the NCAA, it was like that they just, hey, we're not going to touch this, instead of, hey, let's figure out, we need to make a workable model. Let's get together with the athletic directors. Let's kind of figure out how we can do this. And instead, it was just, we're going to wait till the courts force us, and then we're just going to throw our hands up, which is basically what happened.
Well, that's my question, Jay, is when was this coming about? Was there talk when you were coaching here 10 years ago about this?
Not really, but when California passed the law 3 years ago,
okay, so that's when it really...
I was on the board of trustees, and we had a briefing, and I there's a great scene in the movie Back to School in the business class where the guy's talking about, well, we're going to build this factory or whatever. And Rodney Dangerfield looks at him and goes, oh, you left a bunch of stuff out. You got to grease the local. And I'm not sure if you know who runs the waste management business, but I assure you it's not the Boy Scouts. And I basically had that moment in the trustee meeting. I said, you guys don't, this is not going to be a billboard for a car dealership. I said, coaches spend our entire lives finding the loophole. In a defense, there are no loopholes here. I said, we got to start to get ahead of this. And, the NCAA didn't, and, they had a 3-year run up. The Congress will do it. Really? Have you checked Congress lately? Yeah. They're not exactly jumping on every issue, and they've got bigger things to deal with. So, one of the questions I've been asked over the years is, of the last 2 years, what do you think your dad would think of this? I said, I can tell you what happened when California passed the law. He would have said, let's get in a room and figure out how we land this plane, because the plane's coming. Yeah. And, to me, you're going to get to, I think this is going to end up within 2 years or 3 years. Another Supreme Court case is going to get there on revenue sharing. The NCAA is going to lose, and we're going to be in a revenue sharing. And I think that's when you get in the room with athletes and say, let's find a way to, pull back on the Wild West of name, image, likeness, and let's let the revenue sharing become a part of this factor.
Yes.
And I think that's why now all of a sudden it's a level playing field for as many people as possible.
Yeah. Now, what your dad doesn't get enough credit, and they say that he was so super old school that he would never get involved with this and that. But if there was ever a dollar that could be legally given to his players, he was getting it.
Oh, no question.
He was the first guy to do the bowl trips and all that stuff. No other schools had that.
Yeah.
And that's not a loophole. That was the rule.
Yep.
And he could legally get his players some extra money or this and that, and he went and did it. He would wholeheartedly would be a 1,000,000% on board with that if done legally.
Right. And I think where athletic departments are happy right now to let the NIL marketplace go is because if you get to revenue sharing, whose pocket does that come out of?
You're talking about revenue sharing, Jay. Okay, you're talking about football players versus a women's lacrosse player, or just?
If you said to me, how would I revenue share?
Yeah.
I would I'll just take a round number because I've done it for a sports business class. If you took 30% of the Big Ten television revenue, because
just the Big Ten,
just the Big Ten television revenue, and you distributed among all 800 athletes at Penn State, every one of them would get $25,000. That's a significant chunk of money, and for most of those kids, that's going to go to pay for them to go to school.
Right.
And if you do it evenly, then you're okay with Title IX. People don't realize, the third highest rated sport on the Big Ten network after men's basketball and football is women's volleyball. And now they're going from where they were doing volleyball matches on the road Friday, Saturday. Now they're flying out to Lincoln, Nebraska on a Wednesday night because the Big Ten wants to have that game. And so, now they're all going on this network. And look, and then that way it's fair for everybody. And $25,000. All the football players that are on full scholarship, if you want to complain about your
$500 a week,
if you're going to complain because you're only getting $25,000, then you know what? I don't really have a lot of sympathy for you.
Okay. Yeah, especially when, again, you're looking at the the potential revenue for those that go to the NFL and the potential revenue for those, again, with the Penn State education and with the Penn State football tie-in. Forget the athletic part of it if the NFL doesn't work out. The doors that are open to you for potential earnings are unlike virtually any other graduate of any program. I mean, having that you were a Penn State football player, you're a Penn State grad, helps, number one, with the alumni base and with all of the connections and all of the different industries throughout the country. But you add to it football or really any athletic background, and again, you're going to get doors open. Now you got to obviously then produce
and
I think for
succeed,
the player,
but that's what sports does at that level, is set you up for those opportunities and prepare you for, hey, I know how to manage my time and do all of the things that it requires to be successful.
And I think for the student athletes, they would look at it and say, I get 20. A lot of them are finding out that the name, image, and likeness stuff sucks a lot of time. There's a lot of efforts. Now I got to get W-9 forms. I got 1099 forms. I got taxes. I got all these things. Whereas
same thing we've been saying since it started.
Absolutely. Where now with the revenue sharing, it's very clean. It's concise. It's one thing, and it's done. And you're not worried about I got to go show up here, because you know what's going to happen. You're going to have a quarterback that goes out and does an autograph signing on a Thursday night of a game week and throws 3 picks on Saturday. His social media is going to light up. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, and you're professionalized it so much. And really the reason I think is that the NCAA and so many people are afraid of revenue sharing is that money's going to have to come out of their pockets. And the head coach that's making $9 million a year might have to make ends meet on $4 million a year.
Right.
Which, boo-hoo-hoo. I'm sorry, you're doing okay. You're coaching a game. And I think that's also why, without getting into this can of worms, why you're seeing a lot of these agents now 10-year contracts, 8-year contracts, because they've seen what Justice Kavanaugh said, and they know revenue sharing's coming, and they're like, let's make sure we got this pile cordoned off.
And you say revenue sharing, so I'm sitting there saying, okay, we have close to 900 athletes at Penn State. All right, but then Purdue might only have like 400 because they may not have the amount of sports that we do. So I would, you'd have to say, okay, take the total amount of
the Big Ten,
athletes and then divide it. Then
that's too much math for me though. So when I did that for the sports business class, there were a number of athletes in the class, and I said, how many of you would give up NIL for that? And every one of them raised their hand.
When I asked you to come on the show, we were talking about this the other day, and it's like. My issue, and Jeff will say, it's going to help a guy like David Taylor, a Saquon Barkley, and this and that, but it doesn't help, for lack of a better word, the slapdick left guard back up, wearing a green jersey in practice all week. He's not getting anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I've been in an NFL locker room. I know enough NFL players that there is going to be issues in a locker room. Your left tackle. I mean, I don't want to say names. I don't want to say Oklahoma Sooners. But they have a starting quarterback last year who guys did not want to block for.
No.
He made whatever $5-10 million, and they did not want to block for him. I mean, that's going to be an issue. There's going to be so many more issues in this and that, and I just don't. Like I said the other day, and Ironhead's probably sick of me saying it, but like instead of just dipping their foot in the water. And saying, I give the Eddie Murphy hot tub.
Gonna get hot tub.
Instead of just dipping their foot in there and seeing what it tastes like and seeing how hot it is, and say give a kid $500 a week or $25,000 a year, or every athlete, they just decided to just throw the kid in there, and if he sinks or swims, and there's no monitoring, there's no lifeguard, and it's so bad for football. It's so bad for all the sports, that what we know and we grew up loving and this and that, I don't think it's ever going to come back. And that's my question to you right now. Before you even get into anything else, do you ever think it can get under control?
I think one of the biggest mistakes was the NCAA fought the student athletes organizing as a collect. And
Northwestern.
Northwestern. Yes. So right now, if the NCAA wants to sit down across from student athletes, who are they sitting across from? There's no organization there.
Right.
And I think, once the California law was passed, I had a firm that called me and said, we'd like you to consult because we're going to try and figure out how we build a business model and that kind of stuff. And they're working with a bunch of schools nationally. And the stories you're hearing, they go and they tell the head coach at a major Power 5 school, says you've got an All-American, returning All-American left tackle. The quarterback you just signed is going to make 5 times as much as he is in NIL. And the coach said, well, that's crap. And he said, it may be crap, but that's reality.
Right.
And another school, another Power 5 school, I mean, some of the stories that are coming up, some of them are hilarious. So one basketball program has this group comes in and they meet with the parents, and they're talking with the parents and the basketball players and stuff. And the one player starts talking about a car deal he's got where he's going to get a car. I forget what it was, Range Rover, or was something, you're talking about $700 a month lease that they released for him. So they sit down and said, okay, now here's the deal. $700 a month times 12, that's $8,400 in income. So that you're going to pay taxes on that. Oh, and you're from out of state, but you have to file a state income tax in this state. Oh, and who's insuring the car? And the kid says, well, I'm on my parents' insurance. And the dad was on the call. He goes, not for that car, you're not. And that was the end of the car deal. But I mean, these are all things nobody's thinking through.
Yes.
One student athlete told them, well, I'm getting paid in crypto, so that's tax free. And they're like, no. And that's the thing that, so many people, there's all these things. And there are people trying to get kids to sign contracts to control their name, image, and likeness in perpetuity, and the kid doesn't get to that line, and now all of a sudden they could be an NFL first-round draft pick, and they can't do anything without this firm saying, "Oh, by the way, that's ours."
Well, that's the other thing that scares the hell out of me, and your father was adamant about it, and that is the sports agents.
Mm-hmm.
His biggest fear
No
was
doubt.
getting agents involved in your college football program when he never liked them around there ever. No. My best friend's father was a sports agent. He was just I went to a practice in 1997, and Jim Williams says, hey, man, you can't be here. I said, what are you talking about? He's like, well, if you're here looking at those players and you're still talking to that agent guy, you can't be here. And I was like, Jesus, Ace. And it was the truth. I mean, I understand it, but I mean, that's what scares the hell out of me is once you start getting those guys in there, and then, then they're the agents, and then you're paying the agents, and the agents are pushing guys elsewhere. It's scary, man.
And I think that's one of the things that's going on. We've got a collective now called Success with Honor.
Yep.
And I helped put that thing together. As a trustee, I can't write a check to it, and I can't be on the board of it, but we helped put the thing together because Penn State needed it to be done. And I mean, they're like, you can't write a check to collective. I'm like, really? I can't? Too bad. I'm already running my own collective. I've got 3 kids playing college lacrosse, and so I'm giving them checks to go play lacrosse. But so that was one of the things we wanted to get involved in. And one of the good things about that is part of that process is that when an athlete does something with this collective, this group is reviewing the contract and saying, no, don't sign this, sign that. And if they work through us, there's some protection there in terms of, hey, you shouldn't sign this because this contract says that. And on all the tax forms and all the disclosure and all that kind of stuff is all handled through that collective. And that's one of the things that we've tried to set up a collective that's different than a recruiting ATM machine. And, it's immediately it's how do we, the wrestlers are coming right off a great season again. And, there's 5 guys there that are very marketable right now. And one of them is, one of them made the comment, if I can get paid, I can come back. So I can't direct it, but certainly the guys involved in this collective heard that. So hopefully they can do something and get them back.
Yeah. And that is, again,
and that's a positive.
It's just, I agree. And I think part of it, part of what's going to be interesting to see just how this thing continues to evolve is, listen, there's always, going back to the comment about the level playing field, a MAC school and a Big Ten school are not on a level playing field. Yes. And anybody that thinks that they are, you're kidding yourself. So, it feels like for a while the Power 5 have been wanting to kind of make that move, and I think rightfully separate themselves. And we've been talking. I think you're going to start to see that take place in other sports again, where you're going to have some programs that aren't maybe fully supported within the athletic administrations at various universities. Just go the club route. Which, by the way, the club route. is not a bad route. I mean, Penn State ice hockey, before it became a varsity sport, had a really nice following and a really nice program. Penn State rugby has a tremendous program and a tremendous following. So, I don't think it's the end of the world as we know it if you see sports, some of these sports at some of these schools go that route. And
we talk about the Ivy League route too, Ironhead.
Yeah, and I think that I think you'll see some of that too. And I also think, again, you're going to see these schools. My guess is the NCAA or whatever. I think the new governing body that emerges, which I think will be the case here sooner than rather.
Sans Mark Emmert.
Yes. God
always a fan favorite here at Happy Valley.
Yes, indeed. Well, how could you not love the guy? But honestly, if you, where wrestling is big, right? It is big and it is fully supported. And 9.9 scholarships is not enough in a sport like wrestling, where you have 10 starters, you have, the pretty much the same rate of injury attrition that you do in football. You've got to have, again, at least 12, 13 scholarships to make that a manageable situation for coaches and programs. So the problem right now is if you do that, right, programs are going to drop, and they don't want to have programs drop. I think moving forward, programs dropping is just going to be that's just part of what's going to happen for some of the non-revenue sports at various universities. And listen, again, going back to the level playing field, is it fair that Florida, and I'm making up the number, I don't know if it's 14 or 16, but they have, I'll say it's 16 varsity sports, and Penn State has 31. Well, yeah, how is that? So that the pie is not exactly getting distributed evenly even there. And it's why, I mean, Judy Avner, I remember when she left Penn State women's gymnastics and took the Florida job, and she lived in our neighborhood. We had a long talk about it. And I was in, I think, high school at the time. And she said, listen, they are like doubling my salary, and they just have that money available. And up here, and she goes, and I support what Penn State does. I don't want them to cut any of these other sports, but they can't pay me what Florida's going to pay me. So, right now with her family situation and everything, she's like, I'm going to take the double the salary, go to the warm weather, and run with it. And again, you're going to have those situations still, right? Because you're just never going to be able to create that ideal level playing field because there's different universities that have different and within the athletic departments have different priorities. And I think that's okay at the end of the day.
And I think when you look at Penn State where we're at, we have always had a differential. And that's what's made us unique, is that people came here that wanted to come here, and and they really feel strongly about the place. When you look at in terms of revenue where Penn State is, in discussions with trustees, one of the things I've reiterated was, look, the revenue that we generate in our stadium is not what Alabama generates. It's not going to be what Texas generates. It's not going to be what Ohio State. It's not going to be what Michigan generates. We have to understand that they are in major metropolitan areas. They can do, Alabama can get 7 figures for a suite. We can't, because that's the most valuable piece of sports real estate in the entire state of Alabama, maybe in the entire South. By the time somebody wants to put up $1 million for a suite in Pennsylvania, they're probably getting an Eagles suite or a Steelers suite, and they're going to entertain people in that area without them having to get $500 a night hotel rooms, without having to drive up here. So we have
500. I'll take it.
Okay, you're right. I'm sorry.
Jeez. Give me 7.
But you know what I'm saying. So the reality is we are not. Those people are like the Red Sox. They're like the Yankees. They're like the Dodgers. Yeah. We have to find a way. We're in that next tier. We're not in the poorhouse by any stretch of the imagination, but we're in that tier that's the Phillies, Nationals, and we got to find a way to compete, knowing what our situation is, and have to be innovative. And that's going to be the challenge for us. And it's the same thing with the NIL. Part of the things, when this all started with the collectives and recruits starting to come up with money, I said we're really screwed because we never cheated. We don't have that infrastructure in place. We don't have alums that are used to coming up with a bag of 75,000 or 100,000 or whatever it is. So we are going to have to try and educate people, say, this is legit now. This is legal. This is above board. Not that I agree with it, but so we're in a different situation. So one of the things we've tried to do with the collective we started is have a different approach and getting people to come here because we can offer them connection to a Penn State alumni base that will carry them through the rest of their life, connection, educational opportunities, study abroad opportunities, all those things we're going to fund that are going to be different than what they're going to get somewhere else. So we have to have a differential.
Your is different than somebody just flat out paying a player or giving them a car. You know what I mean? So
we're going to do it.
Explain that.
For example, let's say you had a women's lacrosse player who's not on full scholarship, and she wants to come back for that 5th year, or and her parents say, we can get her a paid internship that would pay for that fall semester, that spring semester. I can't be involved in it. Obviously, when I say we, I got to be careful because somebody will call and say, "Oh, but I'm saying theoretically we." The goal is to get them an internship that's paid. Or if they want to do an internship at Goldman Sachs that maybe only gives them $5,000 to live in Manhattan for the summer, which probably gets them half a month's rent. We can create stipends that are internships. So we're going to do a lot of different things that are really unique. Even if, it doesn't matter what sport it is.
And you're not directly paying a player out of somebody's pocket. That's
the big thing is there's got to be a quid pro quo. It can't be I'm just going to give you $25,000 and you're going to do 2 social media posts.
So
there's a market value.
I would say, you play with my older brother and you coach me and Kevin. So there's this common brother. So me and Kevin,
you guys would have been legends, by the way, in the NIL market.
I mean, the first Raskeller ever sponsored athlete, and I said it.
I mean, your older brother was the first really giant human being that came here. Then Jonathan, which you remember him, but he was the next one that was like, oh my God, this guy's 340 pounds.
Joe hated the fact that Buck was 300 pounds.
I know, that number just bothered. I
know. I played 10 years later.
Get him down to 291.
I was 301 around a 4.940. Your dad's like, you're going to lose 10 pounds. I said, what the hell are you talking about?
People don't realize,
315.
A couple of years ago when they had the Joe Julie, I think it was the kicker that was having, somebody said, to me, I said, look, I feel bad for the kid, but, Joe, we used to weigh guys before and after every practice. And Joe would come in and say to Bill Kenny, hey, Levi Brown's up to 317 from 314 if you talk to him. And Bill would say, Coach, after he goes to the bathroom after practice, he'll be down to 313. Not the people in the radio with him, but I mean, that's the attention to detail that was there with you guys. When Dick Anderson came back, it was like Dick looked at those weights. I mean, he was, well, you're up 2 pounds, Tiger.
1971 all over again.
2 pounds, Tiger. It's like, you probably had a sub and a gallon of Gatorade.
I had 3 Cosmos at lunch.
The Cosmos. There you go. The chicken
Cosmo could have drank nothing but water for 3 months, and he'd still be 325 minimum.
That's absolutely right.
Jimmy Kennedy came in. I think he hit 4 bills.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then he spent, Christy Clark did a great job with him.
Phil Taylor.
Yeah, that's right.
So you're what you're building here at Penn State is, so you're going to help the Conlon brothers run a football camp, like Gerald Cadogan and his brother run a football camp in Ohio.
Yep.
So if they were current athletes, you made your fund would be set
collective,
Your collective would sit there and say, okay, we're going to give you $10,000 to advertise, get everything set up, and then you make money on it. You can make money on it, right?
Well, what we would do, what the collective can do is, let's go with the wrestling team. Let's take the 5 national championship wrestlers.
Absolutely.
And I think a couple of them are graduating, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
I'm not as up on the roster as you are, Jeff. No one is.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not sure Kale's is up on the roster as you are.
Nick's the only one that's out of eligibility,
right.
But actually 3 of them will have college degrees here.
Eligibility is a very changing
These days, that is very true.
Yeah. So, but let's take 3 of those guys, for example. So,
absolutely.
So if a wrestling fan is putting money into the collective and saying, I want this to go towards wrestling, we can take those 3 guys. The collective can take those 3 guys and say, hey, do you want to do a clinic in the Lehigh Valley? Because obviously a lot of attention and excitement about wrestling in the Lehigh Valley, is among other places. But you guys can go. And so the collective will contact the venue. They will get the equipment set up. They'll get everything set up using that money. And then they'll also pay the student athletes to do it. And kids that pay to come to the camp, that'll also go to the athletes. So they've got to do is, with the collective, all they've got to do is have a lesson plan for the camp.
Yeah.
Show up, do it, and get paid.
I
And
agree.
all the 1099,
They
all that
earn it.
stuff's yeah, they earn it.
They earn it. They're not just given a blank check because he signed with Penn State.
And I just got to tell you, not to get off on a tangent, but
That's what we do here.
my dad used to talk about, when Gable was at Iowa, and my dad, going way back when my dad was assistant coach before he was married to make a couple extra bucks, used to drive one of the wrestling vans to away matches. I told Kayla, I don't know if you know that, but it's a little interesting piece that he was driving the van, and he was a single bachelor, so he's probably excused to go.
Yeah, I seen your dad drive, by the way.
I know.
God
it's
bless
not
those
pretty.
kids.
It wasn't pretty. So
holy crap!
But he said, when those Iowa guys would walk in the rec hall or wherever it was, and you saw that across their chest, you knew that was good for a couple of points because they had paid a price.
Yeah.
Penn State has that now.
For sure.
They have that now. It does not matter who they're wrestling. When they take off when they're in that blue and white, it's a whole nother level. And it's absolutely beautiful to behold.
It's like listening to your dad talk about the Yankees.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
But he did hate the Yankees, though, because he was a Dodger fan.
He liked their unis,
but
though.
he respected them, yes.
But,
yes.
When you talk about creative things, too, that I think is going to be interesting to see how things evolve and different ideas. And there's probably things that not even anybody's really thinking of right now I'm thinking just we've had a couple of events. I think I've talked about it a little bit on the show with my wife's foundation where a couple of the student athletes have helped just with the class that they're in, helping organize some stuff. But it got me to thinking that, listen, you could have, in addition to the camps and the stuff we're talking about, but you could just have like a youth activity fun day. And if you get, 10 field hockey players and 10 football players and 10 wrestlers, you could draw thousands of kids, and again, I'm making up numbers, but $10 a pop for the kids, and or $20 a pop, and you get a T-shirt and a snack, and you get to meet and interact with the student athletes, and you do that again one day a year for those athletes. Again, there can be. I think a not insignificant payday for those kids to be involved with something like that. And it also helps, I think, re-engage the community, which I think over the last 10 years or so, we've seen a little bit of fraying in the town-gown relations here. And I think it's from what I'm hearing, it's one of the focuses of the new president is to try to re-engage and repair some of those damaged relationships. And I think that sort of stuff. And again, I'm sure there's a ton of things that can be done.
You can do creatively with it, and that's one of the challenges now that there's a collective out there. Is we're only limited by how creative we can be, right. how creative they can be, and how creative athletes can be. And, a lot of the things right now, a lot of the early things were, here's a $500 gift card to a restaurant downtown, as long as you post every time you eat there. So they do that.
Right.
And I think BYU, they had a booster come in and say, I want these 20 walk-on players to
tell
do
that story.
Social media stuff, and I'll pay their scholarship.
Bruce, listen.
And so everybody goes, oh, wow, that's a lot of money. Well, BYU's tuition is $6,000.
And he told me as I left. I couldn't stop laughing.
I may have to send my kids to BYU now. Holy cow. But so there's all kinds of things that people are trying, and essentially people say, well, they're getting around the scholarship limits. Well, yeah, but guess what? It's legal. Right. So and as long as they're performing something for that, then what do you care? And I think this is a chance. A lot of kids, the overwhelming majority of student athletes at Penn State are paying to come here and play. And that's one of the things we want to try and close that gap with name, image, and likeness for those athletes.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this at least opens the door for that to happen. It's just got to be strategically implemented by those that that have some sense of what they're doing.
Not just throw it out there and say, "Go ahead, guys, go ahead, do whatever you can do." Yeah, and
you got to do it smart, and
so stupid.
It's one thing, recruiting is one thing, but retention is going to be the big thing now
for sure.
Well, that's what I wanted to talk to you about.
Is now with the transfer portal, it's like I'm gone, and you have no. There's no ability, and again, that's a whole nother issue the NCAA needs to really get on top of because. If one of the things that I had written up and proposed and said we ought to advocate this is have a 2-track national letter. So if you want to be able to transfer anytime you want, you sign a 1-year deal. But at the end of that year, if the school wants to move on from you, they can move on.
Paid,
so if you want to have that freedom, if you want to sign a 4-year national letter of intent, then you go back to some restrictions where there's got to be some consultation. There's got to be, because if we're going to guarantee your scholarship for 4 years, there's got to be, the thing that's tough about the transfer portal is you put in time and coaching and academic support and all these things go into this. And then, you're investing a lot of money in young people, and then they can just turn around and leave. Right. And not that, I understand where,
I understand why it's there.
I understand why people want to do that, but I also understand it's too easy.
Yeah.
There's no, they can just go on social media and say, I'm in the transfer portal, and there's no way they don't even have to have a conversation with anybody. But I think there's got to be 2 tracks there. Because I know what my parents would have signed.
My solution:
you're going there for 4 years, and you better plan on being there for 4 years. And if things are really, really bad or horrible, then okay, then we'll have a conversation about it, and we'll have a discussion.
I like to get out of jail free card one time. Okay, so you know what? I did make a mistake. I'm not happy here. My girlfriend's at home. Like JT Mars, I talked about him the other day. He wanted to go home so bad, but your father wouldn't let him and this and that. But say in the future, just say you guys going to 3 or 4 different schools in 5 years just drives me absolutely bonkers. Yeah. It's any kind of adversity, they jump ship. So I don't mind the transfer portal because there is a reason. There's a good right. There is coaches leaving. There is some stuff that happens, and it is a good thing for guys to be able to leave. But you go one time.
There's got to be happy.
There's a one-time thing. You're okay. You made a mistake the first time. The second time, it's on you. You can't make 2 mistakes. You know what I mean? That's how I feel about it, because it's being exploited right now. And
the tampering,
absolutely.
You can't tamper with a kid, but high school coaches are in the middle of it now.
You've been in the recruiting world. I mean, I talk to guys,
and the kids are all talking to each other
throughout my college career. With the guys I visited,
part of it, right?
I visited Florida State, and I there was 3 guys that went to my visit in Florida State who went to 3 different colleges, and I still talk to them throughout college. You know what I mean? So guys talk amongst. I mean, you may not be from the same hometown, but you may have met somebody. And you don't have texting back then either. There was none of that stuff.
Come down to school.
I got Marvin Harrison sitting in Syracuse going, dude, $50,000 a month. This and that. And Sean Wood at Notre Dame telling me, hey, come here. That's exactly what's going on, and it's just it needs completely. Who was the Kennesaw Mountain Landis needs to come in and clean house, pretty much, in my opinion.
Well, the NCAA's got to figure out what are we.
Well, the NCAA, they're going to do anything they want to keep their hand in the cookie jar. But I mean,
it's we've forgotten that football is the guy we played for, and the guy I coached with, the guy's house group said, let's remember that football is here to serve the university, not the other way around. And we're getting into this situation where your academic side, people are being asked to cut back, budgets are being cut back, and they're looking across the way and say, well, wait a minute, how come we're borrowing all this money to do X, Y, and Z and that kind of stuff? But I think you got to get into, if you want to be in the entertainment business, then you know what? Let's just
get rid of it all.
Let's just say we're in the entertainment business and say, if you don't want to go to school, then don't go to school.
Right.
I mean, the grad transfer thing is a complete joke because the guys in grad, you want to know why so many of the grad transfers are opting out of the bowl games, because once they lose 2 games, they know they're out of the playoff, and they stop going to school, and they're taking.
You said that 3 years ago, Jeff.
Yeah, and they're taking up a seat. There's tuition money. Just say, you know what, forget it. If you want to be a grad transfer and just have a football internship, then we're not going to waste tuition money on you. We'll take that money and give it to somebody who wants to go to school.
And it may come off like I'm poo-pooing this whole NIL thing, and I am not whatsoever. No. I mean, I completely agree. These players should be paid. I think that's the only socialist bone I have in my body, and they should all be treated equal type of thing. They should all get their own chicken in their pot,
goose in every pot or whatever, chicken in every pot.
But, I mean, that's how I feel. I mean, it's like there's so much that it's good.
Around here, we would say a grouse in every pot, right, Jeff?
That's exactly right.
Because nobody can ever shoot one of those.
It's getting exploited, and it's just like in a bad way. And it could be It just needs to be under control. But because I'm the first person who's going to say, yes, players should be played. There's no doubt about it in my mind. There should be something, and you're saying revenue sharing, and that's the way to do it. I'm on board with that completely because I completely agree with that. Yeah. Now, you made a great point to me the other day. We're talking about this, and that is that there's going to be Title IX like stuff going on here.
That's why you got to. That's why you really got to. If you
there's
go
total ramifications involved with the Title IX thing, and they're getting missed. I mean, I don't want to bring up a weird subject, but I mean, when I said the Ivy League model was pretty good, and the only thing I meant about that was the academic and the need-based granting, and not letting women play on different men play on women. I don't want to go down that Ivy League route, but so.
No, there's no question, Title, and I think that's why if you do a revenue sharing, it's got to be even for everybody.
It has to be,
and
in my opinion.
And what's funny is one of the things that was interesting about the Pac-12 players before COVID when they were talking about this. One of the things the football players were advocating that everybody be treated the same, and I think this generation of athletes, I think there's a really good respect among most of the athletes that go to school, and they feel like, you know what? Yeah, the women should get this kind of money, and they should get. And what companies, the interesting thing in talking to people around the NIL stuff is companies are now recognizing the fact that women are moving product, and where that wasn't the case 25 years ago, they are now saying, Nike's got a deal with a player at UCLA, Gatorade did a deal with the basketball player at UConn who then proceeded to get hurt. But the point is, they're picking female athletes that are now, and they're starting to realize there's a return on those.
And it's good though. That's good.
It's healthy. I've got girls that play sports, and they have people they look up to, and that's good.
Yeah, no, for sure. A couple things before we let you go. Just wanted to get your reaction to the E60 piece, and I just we talked about it a little bit on Tuesday. I don't know how much I wasn't sure what to expect. I was hoping for I guess a little more, but in retrospect, again, in an hour. I don't know that you could do any kind of service to any component of the story. My disappointment was I just felt like it was just a very superficial, we're going to barely scratch the surface on any element of this. And it was all headlines. To me, it was just a rehash of the headlines from 10 years ago or 11 years ago. And it just, I don't think it advanced the narrative in any direction on any element of the story forward, which again for me was disappointing.
I would agree with you in that the gist of the story was that this idea of Joe Paterno's legacy is still in limbo, and I think to get to that point, they did a good job explaining in the second segment. I think it was what he all stood for and how big it was and how different we were and all those kind of things. Yeah. And I think that was to set the stage as to why this story took on the life it did. But I think, 10 years later, we all know the story. I think there are people that probably watched that for the first time and have forgotten about certain things or not. But I think the danger of this story, and I had this conversation with John Barr when they first approached me about going on the record with him. I said, you got to be careful because there are so many threads of the story that you could do 10 hours on it. And you can't get, was Jerry's trial fair? There were people that argue that. Was Graham and Tim and Gary, was that fair? People argue that, Joe was treated a certain way. This happened. I mean, there are all these things, the NCAA sanctions. We all know, everybody knows the free report is not worth perforating and putting on a roll to use for that. What use I'm talking about, but there's a whole argument there. So I think you get into where you could go 20 different ways, and they were trying to keep it narrowly focused on the legacy part. And I thought they did a good job of that. And also part of it was that Penn State, for whatever reason, does not seem to want to embrace that part of our history, and that came through.
By the way, you're on the board now. Do we have the date when Louis Freeh is coming back? He said he was going to come back and answer all questions. Has he given you guys the date on when he's coming back?
And what's funny is
probably next year. Now.
Well, the funny thing is the board never voted to accept that report. So as far as that's what people don't realize, the board never voted. So that's one element. And then when there was some settlement of some of the legal issues, the university statement, which was read by Mark Dambley very fast and in a mumble tone, basically said that this board does not recognize the conclusions that the free report made about certain individuals. So they're basically saying they don't believe what they said about Joe. So those things are kind of resolved, but they're not really trumpeting those things for whatever reasons, and they should. And I think, that's just the way it is.
I went total Philadelphia on there when you talk about rolls, and I was like, "What the hell roll are you talking about?" Now you're talking about toilet paper.
Yes, perforated.
I was sitting there saying cheesesteak roll, hoagie roll. We got seats on top. What's going on here?
Perforated rolls. The ones you roll when you're doing
Goon's asking Booch to pass the butter over. It's like, no, Goon.
No.
Chicken on there. What do you got?
The rolls you use when you go to the bathroom to take a Michigan.
All right, so I want to get back to the NIL stuff, but I also want to get back to the transfer portal stuff. And that's why I asked you to come on the show, because you have the answers that I don't know. And that is, think about all the tax ramifications of people donating money. And I just don't you give somebody like Ohio State, they're giving guys cars. What the hell is he? Marky Mark giving somebody a car. Okay. Where's Marky Mark's tax break with that? Is it advertising, marketing?
Yeah,
but that's not a write-off. That's a business expense.
Yeah,
I get that.
It comes as a business expense.
Wouldn't it be a lot easier to give Ohio State that money and
then
get a write-off somehow, or go into what you're doing?
But and again, that's going to be one of the challenges as you look at athletic departments going forward. Is that we want some of our fans to give money to NIL, but that's money they're not going to give us. So that's one of the challenges that a couple of us.
That's our issue here.
Yeah, one of the challenges that a couple of us have brought up as trustees. Show me the business model that you think where we will be in 2 and 3 years, when all of a sudden that the guy that has $100,000 to give the athletic department suddenly gives $50,000 to NIL.
Right.
And so we think they'll do both. I said they'll do both, but remember, money is finite.
Yeah.
That might be a lesson. Well, forget it. Okay, I'm gonna cut myself off there before I say something I shouldn't say. But money is finite in terms of that guy has that much to give, and if all of a sudden you're encouraging them to give it to your athletes, that's money you're not getting to do other things, and you got to start to realize that's going to happen.
Penn State Sports Property is not going to be happy about Geisinger giving $200,000 to sports athletes instead of giving Penn State.
Correct.
They're gonna lessen what they give to Penn State because they give to the players, and that's going to be Penn State's issue, and that's going to be from the start. It's always going to be our issue. The infrastructure, we don't have to support this.
No doubt.
So again, I have another question before you go, and I wanted to get. So you played, I played, you coached, I was there with you, and all that. The locker room dynamics, but in the dining hall dynamics. Okay, say Ironhead, I'm going in the transfer portal. Okay. Is he still in school? Is he still at our dining hall? I don't know.
I'm not sure what the policy is at Penn State, so I can't answer that one.
I need the answer to this, damn it. Because I know what would happen if Ironhead says, I'm going to transfer portal and this and that, and he tries to sit down next to me, and I'm on my team, get the hell away from me. You know how it is.
Yes, I know.
Right? You don't want to be part of us? Get the hell out of here.
You left us. So I'm not sure what the policy on that is. And I'm sure it's different with every school, and so I don't know.
Yeah,
damn it, Jay.
But it'll be that's another thing that as we move down the tracks, it may be something where conferences step in and say, "Listen, this is the policy," because we don't want one school providing everything for a player and another school, as soon as the announcement is made, just cutting them off altogether and kicking them out of the classrooms and the whole bit.
Your dining hall's in the portal over there, Joe. You gotta have fun, man.
I want to talk a little bit too, just about the blue-white game and both from a player's perspective, a coach's perspective. And I just think this year fans are juiced just because you're actually able to get back in and have that, kind of spring passage right.
Weather's supposed to be nice, by the way.
Oh, my gosh, it looks absolutely beautiful. But
I think everybody's antsy to get back in there and see, this weekend has always been such a big weekend. They're not doing some of the things that Guido was doing back then, which I think is a mistake. The carnival, all those things. I thought that was really, really innovative.
I thought they're having a carnival, a boardwalk or some sort. Are there rides?
Well, no, it's
not.
So it's not a real carnival with like slides.
Not like
okay. Because I didn't know what the hell the boardwalk was, and I get it now.
No, it's kind of, what they're doing is they're putting up all the concessions and stuff but it's not like when they had the fireworks on Friday night,
Yeah.
they had all that stuff. And a lot of schools are going that way. Guido's working with Rutgers now; they're heading that way. But I think that part of it. But coming back for most people is enough. Tailgating is enough.
Yeah.
For most of them, I have to miss it because I have lacrosse games out of town on Saturday.
Yeah.
Although
ANC playing LaSalle soon.
Even when I was coaching, I was like, okay, when can we end this game? Because I don't want anybody to get hurt. I mean, the one year we had lightning as the start of the third quarter, and we were like, woohoo! That's good too. But the thing about it is this is, and I hope this never changes because it would come up every couple of years. Is in this environment where we're at now, it's a chance for a lot of kids who maybe their family can't afford to bring them up to a game or 3 games or 5 games. They can get in the stadium. They can see the guys. They can
absolutely
like there's there's so and so and there's so and so and there's so, and I think that, and you have to do that to continue to build interest in the program.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the great things about the Blue White game.
And they're not having the autograph thing this year. And I don't know if that's an NIL thing where the guys are like, I don't want to do it.
That was one of my concerns
because that was the great thing. I mean, as a player, it sucked. You hated it, but you did it. You know what I mean? I mean, you little kids
come on,
Keith,
you love the kids.
The kids, they're climbing all over me like I'm a jungle gym. That's fine. I got a big game ahead of me, guys. Get off me. I got.
But I think that those are the kind of things that you got to do. You talked about town gown relations. You want these people to be buying tickets 10, 20 years from now.
Yeah, that's what I say.
We didn't sell out a single game last year.
Yeah.
People don't realize it. We did not sell out a single game. And so, we're in an environment where the length of the games is too long. You look at the student section, it fills up once a year. And I think we're at the point where the product has become so saturated. There's so many games, and every game's on TV.
Yeah, and
you've got to put a value on what that is, and they've got to have some kind of connection to what.
CJ, I've talked to Ironhead about this. We have the military game where people can donate their tickets to military members. They should have a family game. Just like the Villanova game last year, there was 92,000 people there, but the tickets were all sold. So why don't you say, hey, kids 12 and under are free? You know what I mean?
Well, the military games,
it's just like
you couldn't donate the tickets.
You can't do that anymore?
No, you couldn't. You had to buy them for somebody.
Oh, absolutely. You're donating your tickets.
But they wouldn't let you donate ones you had. Which I'm going, what is wrong with you people?
Oh, is that? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, oh, yeah. And I'm like, and exactly. And part of the outreach, one of the committees I'm on the board of trustees is the outreach, which oversees that.
Yeah.
And I said, well, of those tickets we sell, how much of that's going to support the Veterans Center? Well, none. I said, come on, guys. You can't give $10 a ticket to the Veterans Center that they named after Hawk.
Yeah.
I mean, like, come on, guys. Let's think about some things like this. But
so, like I said, I mean, you have 15,000 extra seats. Why couldn't I donate my tickets?
Right.
But I'm actually not donating them. So,
right. But we're not, so.
You're not creating this future. I came here. I was 11 years old.
Right. If you look at the scanned in attendance, not the tickets distributed. If you look at the scanned in attendance, we're down like everybody else.
Yeah.
We had some crowds that were in the 70s, 70,000, which is that's not public knowledge. We don't release those numbers. But yeah, the tickets are sold. The tickets are sold. But at the end of the day, they're not coming.
Right.
And we got to start to ask the question of why they're not coming.
Well, my opinion?
Well, I think it's a variety of reasons. But go ahead.
You talk about the hotel rooms and this and that. Right. Who the hell can afford to come up here?
But it's all. But it's not just here. It's everywhere. College football, and the games. The games. The length of the games was down to about 3 hours and 8 minutes. About 10, 11 years ago, when they first went to some of the NFL rules, it's crept up to 3:25, 3:30, and it's becoming. You look at some of the sports that are starting to grow. They're ones that are over in 2 hours.
Yep.
Baseball. And what people realize is they talk about baseball attendance is dying. College football's attendance is down more than Major League Baseball's.
Is that right?
People don't know that. It's 7.9% versus 7.1%. But it's coming down because hey, you got to pay this to get the thing. You got to do that. I mean, and that's nationally. We're at a point where the game itself is got to heal.
Yeah.
We got to figure out how we get these games down. I think there were 7 or 8 games last year that were over 4 hours. And the NFL in the last 40 years has had 3.
Oh, and listen, the fact is the number of night games and all of the things that you're talking about, right? If you're not, even if you're in the immediate area, it can be difficult if you're asking, hey, you got to get home after midnight. But certainly if you're outside of the area, that's a big ask. When, again, you could just sit at home and, hey, if Penn State starts routing them, I can just flip right over and watch that competitive game between a couple of SEC teams or whatever it might be, and save myself however many hundreds or thousands of dollars.
Sure. And we're more beholden to TV money than we've ever been,
for sure.
Because the model for years was, football would look at, okay, we go out and play the games. How much revenue do we bring in the stadium, concessions and parking, all that kind of stuff, and bowl. When we get a bowl check to go to the bowl and road stuff. So, if you go back to the start of the decade in 2010, the revenue, not the TV, because you get that no matter what.
Yep.
The revenue was about $45.5 million. Football expenses were $21 million. So at the end of the day, Penn State, just by playing football, had a $24.5 million profit without the TV money.
Yep.
You go 8-9 years later, the last year before COVID, it's really the last year we have a non-COVID affected. You went from 45 or so million in revenue to about 48. So it didn't go up that much. Your expenses went from 21 to 49. So you're actually in the red with just your football operation. So now football is drawing money from the TV part where that was never the case, where we were, and the TV money has now eclipsed your in-stadium. So, we may get stuck with a noon game for Ohio State. Why? Because TV runs the roost right now.
Fox is going to take that game.
Yep.
I mean, I would if I were them too. And
sure.
if you look at the ratings, Fox is getting at noon. They're blowing up the ratings.
You're nationwide. You are literally if I lived in the West Coast, I would love it.
Well, when you played that, the ABC, Keith Jackson, Lynn Swan, Bob Greasy game was the noon kickoff, and that was the big deal. Like we're on at noon. Wow.
Yeah,
it was great.
A
lot more time to party after the game, baby. That's what I'm thinking about.
Yes, and the great thing about the noon game is, if the weather's good, everybody sticks around and tailgates. So the traffic will kind of leave sporadically. Where at the night game, everybody's in their car, and it is like it's Mad Max and the Thunderdome after those games, because
start seeing Tina Turner singing. You're like, I'm out of here, dude. This is bad.
The lot behind the east side. There are 12 or 14 streams that go to one.
Oh yeah,
and my God, it is unbelievable.
Yeah,
I mean, even after a win, people are angry and raging. But that's a whole nother.
Oh man.
Anyway.
Yep. Well, as always, appreciate the time.
Great.
Good to see you, man.
Great seeing you guys.
Really appreciate you coming down.
It was awesome.
We hope everybody enjoys the blue-white game this weekend.
Get up here. It's nice weather.
Yep, we'll talk about it and much more on Tuesday's edition of the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead Show here at Quaker Steak and Lube. Until then, be good and be safe.
Best 2 out of 3?
It's one fantastic ride. The turbocharged, tech-inspired new Kia Forte.
There's always something happening at Quaker Steak and Lube. From live music to exciting new flavors, meet your friends and refuel at your local Quaker Steak and Lube today. Can't slow down? Then order online. Pick up and get back on the road. Find us at thelube.com.
We humans have come a long way on our journey. Our first language wasn't exactly, a language. Medium well, thank you. Our first vehicles weren't the fastest.
Can you,
Faster. Hey, boys, punch it! Our first maps weren't that accurate. And fellas, the world is actually, give a ball. Our first phones weren't smart. Text mom winky face emoji. Our first screens, you couldn't touch.
Mom, Dad's feeling the TV.
No one likes a snitch, son.
And the first electric vehicles weren't,
let's just say they look nothing like the first ever Ioniq 5. I mean, two-way charging, AR heads-up display, 300-mile range. What can't this thing do? Look, the point is, it's been a long, yeah, good point, really long journey. But worth it. Your journey at its most evolved, the fully electric Hyundai Ioniq 5.